Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Imagine if you were in a relationship and the way that you approached that relationship was that you would do all the talking and the other person should always meet your needs and do what you wanted. Basically a one-sided relationship. We can imagine that a relationship like that probably wouldn't last very long. We all know that a good relationship has, yes, speaking and talking and maybe asking things of another person, but on the other side, it being reciprocated, that we also listen to the other person and want to help them out and to work for their benefit. But too often, our relationship with God is one-sided. And if we're not careful, it can very well become one-sided in that we do all the talking and we always want God to do what we want him to do and to align his will with our will to accomplish our goals and our dreams. The ecclesiastical writer in Ecclesiastes chapter 5 deals with this. Starting in verse 1, he says, "Guard your steps as you go to the house of God, and draw near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know they are doing evil." Guard your steps. In other words, be careful, watch what you're doing as you go to the house of God or as you go to meet with God. And there they would meet with God at the house of God or at the temple of God. And he says, draw near to listen. And that word for listen implies listening with the intent to obey. To listen, that should be your focus, to listen to what God has to say and to be obedient to what he has to say, rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools. And that sacrifice probably would be the sacrifice offered in connection to some type of vow that the people were making. And people would make vows to God in order to get God to do what they wanted. And say, God, if you'll do this, then I'll do that. And it's all a way of trying to get God convinced to do things the way that they would have him to do. He says it's better for you to try to align your will to God's will and to listen to what he has to say with an obedient heart than to try to twist God's arm to get him to do what you want and to get things in line with your will. He says they do not know that they are doing evil. They don't think there's anything wrong with that. But he says in verse 2, do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven and you are on the earth. Therefore, let your words be few. So don't be too impulsive. Don't act out of pure emotion or reacting to a situation impulsively and then just make a rash vow before God and say, Lord, help me in this situation. If you help me with this, I'll do this. And not really think about what you say. Again, having a heart to listen, be more in tune with God and listening to what he has to say than being impulsive and just making rash vows. It says in verse 3, for the dream comes through much effort, and the voice of a fool through many words. When you make a vow to God, do not be late in paying it, for he takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. And so if you do make a vow, you need to pay it back. You need to make good on the commitment that you made with God when you made the vow. It says in verse 5, it is better that you should not vow than you should. It's better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. So it'd be better just not to vow at all than to make some commitment and bind yourself to some commitment and then not follow through. Do not let your speech, verse 6 says, cause you to sin, and do not say in the presence of the messenger of God that it was a mistake. In other words, I made this vow as a rash vow, therefore I'm not going to fulfill it, that sort of thing. Why should God be angry on account of your voice and destroy the work of your hands? For in many dreams and many words there is emptiness, rather fear God. In other words, we need to fear God, respect God, reverence God in the way that we approach God. And the way that we would do that would be first to want to listen to what he has to say. First listen to what his desire is, what his will is, and to try to submit to his will. before trying to get him to align himself with our will. There's nothing wrong with us bringing situations to God. Certainly, God even encourages us to do that. He tells us to cast our anxieties upon him, for he cares for us. He does tell us to come and bring our troubles, our difficulties before him. But all the while we do it, we should also be listening as well and being attentive to what he wants and what his desires are and submitting to that will. Again, it's just like any other relationship. Yes, there is a time and place for speaking, for praying, for making supplication and request to God, but there's also a time to listen as well and to seek out what God's will is and his desires. And so as we approach God in our day-to-day approach to him, or our day-to-day interactions with him, let's spend time listening to him through his word, listening to him through the environment, through the situation, through the circumstances, to try to be in tune with what God is trying to show us in the situation, and doing it with a submissive heart that says, you know what, Lord, whatever you want to happen in this particular situation, I submit to you. I bring my request to you, but ultimately I submit to you. I pray a prayer similar to what Jesus did, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And be seeking the Lord's will and trying to follow his will and listen to his will as we engage in this relationship with him. So these are some things that we can think about as we interact with God and enjoy this relationship that we have with God. And hopefully this was helpful to you. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.